How's it going, ladies and Bruces? I'm Bobby Sixkilla and welcome back to the Divine Deception. We have a gold key now, so we can make our way to the final episode here. We finished Mercury's one here. We can finish up, what was his name? Devon's one here, and then, depending on what key we get, we'll change what we're going to be doing next time. Hopefully, either this one or this one. Otherwise, we're going to have to be starting these ones or pushing through this one. One or the other, but let's jump into this one, shall we? And finish off Devon's story. Because we kind of know how Devon's story goes, at least to the point where he leaves Mercury's apartment, because we saw it from the other side. The killer. I was red hot with anger. To try and keep myself calm, I tried counting down from a high number in my head. 219, 218, 217, 216. Ah, fuck that. It wasn't enough to placate me. Not now. Not after my whole world had been turned upside down. Miss Aisha? No, Governor Aisha. I dedicated so much of my life to her. So much effort. I killed on her orders. Did absolutely horrible things. And for what? What had I gotten out of it? Absolutely nothing. All I'd done was act like a pawn for a greater power. Just like when I lived under Odin. I was without autonomy. Reliant on her. No more. I would no longer be manipulated. From here on out, I'd be the one making choices. Starting with my choice to confront Governor Aisha. I needed to talk with her. Not that I wanted to hear her talk at me. I'm talking about real talk. I want to confront her with everything I know. All the issues that I had with her. I just put them in her face, see her try to justify herself. If she explained herself well, then that would be one thing. But if she didn't, 207, 206, 205, I'd get there soon. Then, hold on a minute. I claimed that I'd no longer be manipulated. But was that not what just happened? I'd entered a room with a plan that I'd created. I intended to follow through on it. I had a conversation, and now I was doing something completely different. Had I not just demonstrated a textbook case of manipulation? And I mean, I got this information from Mercury of all people. Their whole thing seemed to be deception, trickery. They were far from a trustworthy source. And they were the one I was putting my faith in? My brow furrowed at this. Was I mistaken to be angry at Aisha? Maybe I was being rash. Maybe this wasn't really me thinking. Maybe I hadn't been wrong to follow Aisha. Maybe I should look... I shook my head. No, that isn't rationality talking. It's weakness. Mercury didn't plant new thoughts into my head, not really. They just made me confront ones that were in the shadows of my mind. Ones that I didn't want to look at. But really, I've been slowly approaching this conclusion for a long time. I tried to push these dissident thoughts away, thinking they were just baseless self-doubts created by the worst corner of my mind. But now, I can see it was my conscience trying to break through to me. The logic that I used to dismiss all these concerns was nothing more than denial. How had I not seen the truth sooner? I guess you can't see what's what when you're in the thick of things. You can't really tell what's logical or what's just denial. What doubts are simply self-sabotaging and which ones you should listen to. But now I could. Now I saw how misguided I'd been all this time, and now I was ready to do something about it. 176, 175, 174. Still, despite all that, the thought of actually confronting Aisha was met with some resistance. Half of me hated her, but half of me just felt sad. I just wanted to understand why she'd done what she'd done, what her real intentions were. A solid part of me refused to believe she was really this evil figure. Sure, maybe she was misguided at points. She'd lost herself a bit. She hadn't been pushing forwards her agenda as much as she needed to. But evil? The woman who had never been anything but nice to me? Who reached out at my lowest point? To this, my cynical side responded, was she really always nice? Wasn't the fact that she reached out when I was at my lowest point a calculated move on her part? Think about it, would she really value you at all? No, that last question being slipped in with two legitimate ones. The dark part of my mind was sneaky like that. I didn't care whether or not she valued me. That didn't matter at all. The question was, who was Governor Aisha really? Misguided? Or a monster? I knew which answer I wanted to believe. I also knew which answer had more evidence. In the end, well, it wasn't the end yet, was it? I would confront her, here and now. I'd let her speak for herself. And then I'd make my decision. Finally, I reached the governor's building. Without thinking, I knocked on the door. As soon as I did, I realized my mistake. It was a day off. There wasn't even a guard present at the front desk, an extremely rare occasion. In theory, Aisha shouldn't be here. But I knew her well, better than most. This close to the election, there was good odds I'd still find her in her office. So I reached deep in my pocket. Finally, I pulled out the emergency key Aisha had gifted to me. I remember what she said when she crafted it for me. A reminder of my faith in you. I put that key into the door's keyhole, and with a turn, I unlocked the governor's building front doors. Briefly, I looked over to the security camera that was capturing my face. Then I continued into the governor's building. I walked over to a nearby hallway. I reached under the closest painting and pressed the button. As I walked along the hall, I reached into my pocket. My hand grabbed the pistol. I didn't know if I would use it. I didn't want to use it. I held it nonetheless. Finally, I reached the door to Aisha's office. I took a deep breath in, and then I entered. Sure enough, Aisha was in the room when I entered. Aisha was working on something on her laptop. After I entered, however, she shut the computer and stood up. She looked surprised to see me, which I suppose was understandable. I hadn't given her any forewarning, which was abnormal. The surprise didn't last long, however, before it turned into anger. Devin, what are you doing here? Did I not make it abundantly clear? We cannot be seen together. We cannot be remotely associated. I've worked hard for a cover story in the case that those photographs come out, but the moment anyone gets another glimpse of us together, the whole thing comes crashing down hard. You just need to stay away. Do nothing. Are you really so useless you can't even do that? I held my tongue. What? Speak, why don't you? Or what, did you come here to fuck things up? I mean, please, tell me you didn't break my one order for no good reason. What on earth could have possibly... It was at this point that Aisha trailed off. I wasn't sure what did it. Maybe she noticed the expression on my face. Maybe she noticed the pistol gripped in my hand. On second thought, it was probably that. Whatever it was, Aisha reconsidered her approach. She realized that maybe she should be a bit more diplomatic. Yeah, probably be more diplomatic when you're talking to a confirmed murderer, serial murderer, holding a gun. With no guards around. She took a deep breath and recomposed herself. I'm sorry. That outburst was unwarranted. Things have been stressful here. Honestly, despite it all, I'm a little grateful that you're here. It's comforting to have someone on my side around. Someone on your side? Right. I know that we can't be seen together now, but you've always been clever, Devin. You know that that's important. You probably thought of that before making your way here, right? Yes, I shouldn't have assumed otherwise. I trust that you did the appropriate legwork beforehand. In that case, I'm glad to be able to talk to you face to face. I'd like to apologize for that phone call I made to you not too long ago, the one that initially instructed you to keep your distance. It has dawned on me that the language I used was overly harsh. I was not being productive at the time. In fact, I'm afraid I may have been quite hurtful. So because of that, I'd like to apologize right now. Yeah, fucking A, I would too. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I was lashing out and that's not acceptable. Aisha made a small bowing motion, signaling her apology. And stupidly, a part of me felt moved by this. It was obvious what this was. Her covering her tracks. And all the same, already a part of me was reconsidering. It's fine. I didn't come here to get an apology. Ah, right. You've always been quite mature, Devin. Let me guess, you wish to discuss future plans. Something like that. Right. I did say in anger that I was considering severing our relationship. Obviously that was hyperbole. We simply need to reconsider some aspects. We can discuss that now. We can. But actually, I have some other things I'd like to ask you about first. I feel like I can't read today, I apologize. Is that right? Oh, then okay. It's not as though that there are any particular time restraints in our conversation. I'll allow you to ask whatever questions you wish before we move on to the real meat of things. Good to hear. What I want to talk to you about is... It was simple what I had to ask, and yet I felt the words catching in my throat. Despite how I phrased it, this isn't some light conversation topic. I was accusing Aisha with this. That was something I couldn't just take back. It wasn't something I wanted to take back. My resistance to asking the question only emboldened my determination to get answers. What's your salary like, Aisha? My salary? What an odd question. What, are you considering getting into public service as well, Devin? I must say you've never struck me as the type. Don't try to obfuscate like that. You know damn well that's not what the question was about. I'm sorry? Considering everything we do, you must be making a lot of income. I mean, from Art Deismer alone, that must be a significant amount. I'm not just wondering how much money you are making from all of this. Is this some sort of negotiation tactic? Devin, your work is greatly appreciated. If you wish for a raise, simply asking would... No. Stop it, this isn't about me. I'm asking directly about you. Are you using your position as governor to make a lot of money? You are. I already know that. I know that already. How much? Why? At this point, Aisha was openly confused. And something else, some other emotion I wasn't quite able to pin down. You know, Devin, salary is really something you're not supposed to ask about in polite company. Just like age and weight. I've never been one for polite company. Answer the question. Well, for your information, There are indeed a couple of revenue streams that I've set up from my position. Support from Olimpo is in fact chief among them. Fundraising from supporters is also greatly appreciated. However, I similarly have many expenses to consider. For instance, there is your salary. My salary? Devon, I know that you don't like to live lavishly, but I have always made sure that you're compensated fairly for your intense and dangerous work. I'm sure you have quite a sizable savings account at this point. There are traditional campaigning expenses that every politician that you ask could lecture you about. Additionally, there are several other protocols that we've put into place that require upkeep. Many bribes to keep track of, this year including our very own... Why? Why? Why, to make sure that I can continue to do good as governor. You've already got public sentiment behind you. You've already been probable... You can already probably win elections without all this. In that case, wouldn't it be better to spend this money advancing your agenda? You say that change is slow. That's why you haven't been able to perfectly reform Panthea yet, right? Well, I did learn something from my family. Throw money at a problem, and it goes away. That's just a thing you can do. And I know you know how to do that. So then what? Shouldn't you be spending this cash working on the change you intend to create with your position, not on keeping the position itself? Devon, your concerns are valid. Perhaps an inventory of our current budget is in order to make sure money is best spent. However, there are certain nuances from your position you may not be able to appreciate. Money can get you far, true, however there's still limits. Some change must go through the proper channels. And I'm looking for a complete systematic reform. That's not easily bought with cash. It's bought with political capital. Making sure I'm able to continue enacting change is just a different form of investment, you see? Maybe. But that's not my only question. I've been doing some rough math in my head. I know I don't have access to a lot of hard figures, but I still went through the Deismer's stupid financial projection training. I've been thinking about everything I know about, and even still, you should be making a lot more than you're spending. Where's that extra money going? Is it going anywhere? Or are the rumours right? Are they being funneled into a secret stash? When you stop being governor, you're just going to live off that stash for the foreseeable future? Devon, that is quite enough. I know you're likely upset over recent events, but this is not an excuse to behave in this manner. Your accusations are frankly offensive. What are you even thinking? You're right, you don't know the numbers. You don't know much of anything, in fact. So I find it highly amusing that you intend to make any claims about my finances from your limited knowledge. For the record, no, I do not have some secret stash of collected wealth. Now in the future, would you consider before speaking such filthy slander? I will consider? Oh, I considered alright. Evidently not. Evidently so. I thought a whole bunch about it. And you dismissing my concerns just like that is bullshit. I'm not dismissing anything, I'm stating that you are factually incorrect. And given the nature of these allegations, I think it's well within my right to be somewhat offended. You know what? No. No, actually I don't think it's within your right. Excuse me? You heard what I said. From the start you claimed that this was a partnership. Now I get that it's not one-to-one. Obviously when I'm working for you, we're not going to be quite like equals, but still there's a limit, you know? There's some basic respect I'm owed. And you've never really shown it. You think I haven't shown you respect? You've been polite when it suited you. But if we're working together, we should be viewed as equals. I should be able to ask questions, have complaints. I should be allowed to disagree with you at times. But whenever I do, it always devolves into something like this. You're saying it is your right to be offended when I question you? Fuck you. I got a legitimate question I put a lot of thought into, and for you to dismiss it outright is bullshit. I didn't dismiss it outright, I gave you a straightforward answer. And it's less a question than it is an accusation. Call it whatever you want. It's still me coming to you to look for a dialogue. That's not unreasonable. You hiring me to be an assassin, for Christ's sake. You're not some moral paragon. The idea that you'd be skimming profits is not unthinkable, and me pushing you on that topic is not unreasonable. Huh. My god. You ungrateful little shit. What? You heard me. Where do you get off acting like this? Acting like what? Acting like you've been treated unfairly somehow. You've completely forgotten where you came from. Don't you remember when we first met? You had nothing. You were about to rot in jail. You were purposeless, passionless, useless. I gave you a life. You took away my life. What? You took my life away from me. You filled me with some bullshit purpose that served your ends. You co-signed me to serve under you. I didn't co-sign shit. You had a free choice. You could have left at any time. Look, you don't get to say that. You know that's not right. I had no choice but to follow you. To kill for you. No, it would have been better if you just stole years from me. I could live with missing years. What you turned me into was a monster. I killed for you. I murdered people for no good reason just because you thought it might help you a little bit. that these people might be a threat. Oh well, I'm so sorry. Next time I won't reach out. I'll just let you rot in jail by yourself. Don't try to spin this as though you're doing something selfless. You reaching out to me when I had no other choice was not noble, it was manipulative. It was a calculated choice you made to put me in your debt. And it worked. Until now, at least. Until now? Huh, is that what this is? You're here to what, resign? You think you can have a normal life that easy? Then fine, you'll let go. You can see yourself out. Like hell I'm leaving here. I'm not quitting shit. I'm here to get answers. You're gonna give them to me. Sure, fine. I haven't put up any fight on that front. You asked me if I was skimming cash, I said no. What else? Aisha, what do you believe in? What's this? Have I not told you? Panthea needs to be better. It deserves better. I believe in making this city the best version it can be. To do so, there are many Quit it. Oh, now you want me to stop answering? I want you to stop bullshitting. You're talking to a politician, man. That's all they can do. That is their entire skill set. I don't want to hear some vague promises. I want to hear actual policies. Things thought out carefully. Things that will actionably make the city better. Things that are worth the sacrifices made to get here. You've had many years at this point to make changes as governor, most of them fairly uncontested. But guess what? For a whole lot of people, Panthea still sucks. So what gives? Was the still talk about making Panthea better just bullshit? Or are you actually a shitty leader? Because either way, it makes me really wonder whether any of this has ever been worth it. And it's making me think the answer is no. At this, Aisha just grimaced. Her eyes narrowed. I finally realized what the emotion I couldn't place was. Suspicion. Devon, this isn't you. Where'd you get this information? What information? These are all just obvious questions I ask. No, this isn't coming from you. Someone put you up to this. Who is it? Who turned you against me? Nobody turned me against you. Well, maybe that's not true. I could argue you did. Excuse me? Whatever. I asked you a question. You can answer it. Devon, you moron, of course you wouldn't understand this. Okay, if I don't understand it, explain it. Change isn't always that fast. When you look at it, I've implemented many programs that are oriented on producing long-term positive effects. Not seeing worlds of change in the span of a few years fundamentally misunderstands how history works. It is true that there are more drastic reforms that are possible, however, people are not built for that. I'm not talking about amassing political capital, I'm talking about on a societal level. People can't handle hard changes. They're likely to spark outrage, backlash, fear, all sorts of things. That's because, whether they'll admit it or not, most people feel safe where they currently are in life. Wild changes scare them. The most surefire way to make Panthea better is by making progress incrementally, and with policies that have long-term effects. I get that's not so satisfying, but my job isn't to be satisfying. My job is to make Panthea a better place, even if it's not a popular process. I had to think about her response for a second before opening my mouth. Like always, it seemed reasonable enough, but if I'd learned anything recently, people could seem quite different from how they really were. You didn't name a single concrete issue in that whole speech. What? That whole time you were explaining things, you didn't go into a single specific issue. You use no data or evidence to back up your arguments. Even if it sounds convincing, you're basically just relying on me trusting your judgment of things. Devon, do you really want to talk specific policy? We can if you want, but if I'm being honest, I doubt you'd understand it. Maybe you're right, but no, you're not being reasonable right now. I mean, there is some sense in what you're saying. But I know a lot. I've seen a lot. And I don't sense you being honest right now. What? Maybe at one point you really did have some specific plans in mind. You really believed the rhetoric you're spinning. Maybe you even think you believe it right now. But deep down, that's not what this is. You just care more about keeping your position than you do about making change. When I walked over here, I cycled through a lot of possibilities of what you might really be like. But now I can see it. It's not overly complicated. It's not super hard to understand. It's not that dramatic. It's not even that evil. Not even that uncommon. You just can't bear the thought of losing power. You're just human. And what the fuck would you know about that? About being human? Devon, you're the most inhuman person I've come across. And you're making a huge mistake. Betraying me like this? Do you think when you explain yourself back on that fateful night, anyone else would have seen it the way I did? Anyone would have understood you? Not a fucking chance. They would have thought you were a fucking monster, and rightfully so. It was only me that saw any value in you. And it turns out I was wrong. You truly are a worthless, amoral piece of shit. I'm just surprised I hadn't realized it sooner. Aisha began chuckling to herself in a slightly unstable manner. Oh, Devon, you absolute moron. You don't realize that I was your only hope. Nobody else will ever care about you. There'll be no other place where you can be halfway useful. You had one chance to be of any value, and that was with me. After this, you got no one. Nowhere. There's not a single place a murderous, brain-dead, useless monster like you can go and be accepted. Understand? Part of me understood Aisha was just lashing out. I guess she really was self-deluded, if she was actually offended by what I said about her. On some level, I knew that Aisha was also just in pain, and looking to say the things that would hurt the most. And another part of me couldn't help but agree with what she said. It was unlikely anybody else would ever be able to understand me. Understand what I'd gone through, and what I'd done, and why. It was a part of why I clung so desperately to Aisha. She felt like the one person who might value me. And now that connection was severed. And just as I thought about this, I came to a surprising realization. I don't care. Huh? I don't care about that. It doesn't matter. I know I'm making the right choice by confronting her. That's all that matters. Are you serious right now? Deadly. Now I want more answers. Seriously? I think we're done here. My hand, which was gripping the pistol, raised, taking aim squarely at Aisha's chest. This isn't a discussion anymore. You're going to tell me what I want to know. And starting now, you're just going to tell the truth. Aisha was clearly becoming increasingly uncomfortable by the second. For the first time in the whole interaction, she probably felt a legitimate sense of danger. It had now dawned on her that she might be in danger. Good. She played God behind a desk long enough. She needed to have a taste of what it was like on the actual battlefield. I could tell from her eyes that she was scanning the surroundings, looking for some sort of way out, a way to guarantee her safety. However, before long, she came to the conclusion that she had hired a pretty good assassin. There wasn't much that someone completely untrained could do. Okay. Fine. What do you want to know? I'm an open book. Just tell me and I'll give you the information you want. This brought me to a question. What did I want to know? Despite everything, I hadn't quite thought this far ahead. It wasn't like I didn't have anything to ask. In fact, the problem was practically the exact opposite. I had too many things I wanted to ask. Conflicting questions vied for priority in my head. Eventually, however, a clear forerunner stood out. A question that, for whatever reason, had stuck with me all this time. Who killed Maximilian Collins? Seriously? Devon, what is your obsession with that case? Are you secretly friends with that guy or what? I'm not the one asking questions here. You want to know more about the case than you're letting on. I want to get some answers. Fine. Fine, okay, I'll talk. I want to establish something up front first, though. And what's that? I didn't lie to you when I said I didn't know who killed Maximilian Collins. I don't. I still don't. It wasn't planned for, and I never found clear evidence pointing to an answer. But gun to my head, which I guess this is what this is, I have a pretty good guess as to who did it. Or what, maybe. Huh? You know how I said the only people who knew about the Cock Robin killings were you, me, and Ariane? Yeah? I tried to curb the oncoming indignation from entering my voice. That's not strictly true. Who else? The person who suggested the idea of recruiting an assassin in the first place. The person who got damaging information on my opponent the first election I ran. The person who has kept me informed of the city's happenings. The one who brings me a lot of the targets I end up giving you. And who's that? The Djinn. What? The Djinn? The fuck's a Djinn? That's the name they went by anyways. I don't know the Djinn's identity. They wanted to be anonymous. Honestly, it's mostly been a one-sided relationship. The Djinn helps me out, usually by presenting me with some information, sometimes a more detailed plan, and then they ask for nothing in return. It is admittedly a very unorthodox setup. I too was highly suspicious in the beginning, but at no point was I ever obligated to do anything. Never did I feel like I was being made to do something I didn't want to. I was just receiving help. Again, I don't know who killed Maximilian, but if I had to guess, it would be the Djinn. I'd said nothing up until this point. That's because I was afraid that if I did, I'd reveal my anger. I'd been nothing but loyal to her. For so long. Up until recently, I'd given her absolutely no reason to doubt me, and yet she'd completely hidden this from me. What the hell? What was up with that? Did Ariane know? Was I the only one out of the loop? The disposable tool? Whatever. Focus. Aisha doesn't matter. I should just keep probing for information. You never thought to tell me about this? I thought it was unnecessary. How do you figure that? The Djinn doesn't really matter that much. They just gave some help every now and then. Just some information. No big deal. Just some help. Keep it cool, Devon. Keep it cool. You have no idea who the Djinn is. Not a clue. I don't understand them at all. And really, I don't want to. And you never made an attempt to find out their identity. You're best friends with the Chief of Police. Surely you made an effort. Of course I did. But nothing came up from it. And then the Djinn sent me a message about the investigation. They said they wanted nothing but my support, to support my reign as governor. But if I kept looking into their identity, I could expect no more help. The djinn had gotten me where I was. Obviously, hearing that threat, I called the investigation off. What? What was up with this? I couldn't get a read on the situation at all. The djinn, huh? An anonymous source. A thought came to my head. Was it possible the augmented voice that gave me information earlier today was in fact the djinn? It certainly fit their MO, and that would explain how they knew about me. Well, actually getting my specific phone number is a bit of a leap. Still, if you know who I was, somehow getting that number suddenly becomes a lot more plausible. But again, what was their motivation? To help Aja, looking for nothing in return. That was the wrong way to think about it. Aja being empowered must get them something. But what? Aja said she was never given specific instructions. But if Aja trusts you, and you can offer information and advice at your own discretion, doesn't that sort of mean that you control the governor? Of course, to a limited extent, you couldn't make her do anything unreasonable, anything she wouldn't already want to do, anything that wouldn't help her. Even still, you'd get some amount of influence. Forget it. I'll think about the djinn later. For now, there are other questions I wanted answers to. Or rather, I wanted the answer to a question I'd already asked. I asked you once, I'll ask you again. Are you hoarding cash? Answer the question. I brandished the pistol, reminding her who was in charge here. Fine. You would never really understand anyways. What does that mean? You want to know the answer to your question? The answer is over by that painting of me. Painting of her? I looked over to the right, trying to get a good look at what she meant. It was this instant Aja was waiting for. She must not have trusted me. She thought I'd shoot her. She was too desperate, and so my vision turned away from her. She ducked down and launched forwards toward me. As she rushed in, she reached over to her nearby desk and grabbed the pen off it. And then she stabbed out at me, using the pen as a makeshift dagger. It was a laudable attempt, but she clearly didn't realize how good of an assassin she'd hired. I caught the wrist of her arm holding the pen with my left hand and punched out at her face with the right holding the pistol. As she recoiled, taking a step backwards, I moved in, grabbed her hair with my left hand, then I slammed her head down onto the nearby desk and pushed out. After this attack, Aja fell back limp. Initially, I didn't think too much of this. However, a few seconds passed by and Aja made no attempt to get back up. Wait. Uh-oh. I was in combat mode, not recognizing my own strength. But slamming someone's head against the wood at that angle, at that velocity, that could be bad. Hold on a second. I bent down and reached out to check Aja's pulse. Please, please, please. I breathed out a sigh of relief. There was a pulse. Good. Despite confronting her like this, I hadn't intended to actually kill Aja. Or at least I hadn't made a decision one way or the other. For now, at least, she was still breathing. I must have just knocked her out. Okay. I could deal with that. A little lame that my interrogation had to end now. Well, I guess that was sort of my fault. I recomposed myself. Okay. With Aja down, what was next? I wonder, was Aja's comment about the painting just a distraction? That made sense. If she planned to attack me right after, there was no reason to actually be truthful. But still, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Aja was weirdly protective of this office, and she'd already proven herself to have a penchant for hiding things with paintings. In that case, it couldn't hurt to check, right? I began to walk around the desk. I made my way over to the painting. I gripped onto the frame and... all of a sudden, a loud sound filled the room. A familiar sound. As an assassin, I was well aware of what a gunshot sounded like. I could even place it was probably the sound of a pistol firing. The only question was, why had a gunshot been fired? I mean, I hadn't fired it, and suddenly I felt something cold dripping down my stomach. I looked down to check it out, and it was at this point I made my realization. I laid eyes on the bullet hole that had travelled through my stomach. I looked a bit further forwards and saw the bullet had lodged itself into the wall in front of me. Oh. Instantly my knees buckled. Huh. It was surreal. I thought I'd be in a lot more pain. Instead, things just felt off. This must be my brain making an executive decision. The pain was too unbearable, so I shouldn't be allowed to feel it. Weakly, I collapsed onto the nearby wall. I turned over to look at the direction the bullet must have come from, and there I saw a familiar face had made their way into this office. I didn't know them personally, but I recognized them. You're Kane Shea, right? Wow, would you look at that? I'm famous. Maybe I was projecting. It was probably likely. But with just 2 sentences, it felt as though I could just tell. I could tell that this is the same person who had talked to me over the phone. Kane, for his part, casually looked around the office. When he noticed Aja, he suddenly walked over to her body. Whoa, what's this? What'd you do to her? Knocked her out. Yeah, no, you're right. She has a pulse. Jeez. Gave me a minor panic attack there. What are you doing here? Me? Well, when I sent you over to kill the troublemaker, I thought you were a safe bet. However, given their track record, I wanted to be sure. So Kane's the Djinn? And sure enough, before too long, they reared their head up somewhere else. Good thing I had an insurance plan. But I kind of doubt that actually worked either. God, I really have to give them credit. I mean, turning Aisha's brainwashed pawn against her in the span of a single conversation? That's some real skill, full respect. Anyway, as soon as I realized that they were still kicking, I had a pretty good idea of what had happened. And it was pretty predictable what you did next. Though I really don't like getting myself involved. There wasn't exactly time to set anything up, and there was no telling what you might do unleashed. So I rushed over here and, well, guess I came just in time. Honestly, you've been showing wildcard signs for a while now. I tried to harness that, but that was me being greedy. I should have removed you from the board a while ago. Oh well. I tried to process everything he was saying, but there were too many questions, and for some reason my brain was really fuzzy. Still, I had to put together one thing. You're the one who killed Maximilian Collins, weren't you? Huh? Well, I'll be. The hired muscle seems like you have a half-decent brain. It's a bit of an odd pull, I must admit, but you're not wrong. Sorry for jacking your style like that. Emergency measures and all. Why? Why'd you do it? Why? Devin, my friend, I'm afraid explaining that would take more time than the two of us have together. Short version? Let's just say Max is a great case study for why idiots shouldn't be given a whole bunch of power. Well, I guess I'm lucky. Had he actually been smart, I would have been in a lot more trouble. Feeling as though he had adequately answered the question, Kane looked back over Aisha's limp body. Jeez, really did a number on the lady, didn't you? That's rough. Ah, well, actually, thinking about it, I can actually put this to pretty good use. See that? It's called adaptability. That's what keeps me on the top. You're gonna pay for this. Mm-hmm. And pray tell, how are you gonna make sure of that? In case you've forgotten, you're kind of a little bit shot. Angered, I tried to sit up. However, I was immediately answered with a shot of intense pain. I looked down and I finally realized something I'd been blocking out. I killed enough people to know what a fatal wound looked like. I was gonna die. I had a few minutes left at best, and then I'd be dead. No. I'm sorry, by the way, about the whole killing you thing. I know. Sounds super hollow. Probably is. But I really do try to avoid murder whenever possible. By the way, I shot you in the stomach instead of the head for a reason. Personally, if I were killed, I'd like to know why I was dying. What was happening. That's why I'm talking to you right now. Apologies if you preferred a quick death. I felt anger flare up inside me. Fighting through the pain, I reached my inner coat pocket. I gripped my most reliable weapon. The Gungniri would always eventually hit its target. With all the effort I could muster, I flung the dagger at Kane. It sailed harmlessly past Kane's feet. Are you serious? What was that, man? I get you're angry, but come on. You know fighting back at this point's useless, right? I was struggling to even speak. The dizziness was violent now. Hey, easy. You don't need to talk. Just rest. You know, I hate to say it, but if you just followed Aisha's orders, things would have worked out a lot better for you. It didn't need to come to this. You could have played an important part in making Panthea the city it deserves to be. Instead, you're dying alone in a place like this. An empty, meaningless death. A meaningless death. Kane was right. What had I accomplished? Nothing. I'd thrown a tantrum and been shot. Just like my life, I'd been useless. Was this really how I met my end? Having never amounted to anything? Almost all my life I was miserable. The best I'd ever reached was content. Nobody would mourn me. I did horrible things and failed to properly make up for my actions. Hey, content's great, man. What's wrong with content? I'm all about content. Truly, my life was worthless. And my death was... All of a sudden, I stopped spiraling. I don't know what gave me the strength to do it. Maybe it was a surge of energy that came from my life flashing before my eyes. Whatever the case, in these final moments, I realized I was wrong. My life was meaningless? Who said? The only person who got to make the decision was me. My efforts didn't amount to anything? That wasn't right at all. Maybe it was only at the end, but ultimately I was able to do the right thing. Kane was counting on me to kill Mercury, and he'd come over here to kill me. That was 2 wrenches right there that I threw into his plan. Surely that mattered. It was like nobody would acknowledge what I've done, but people would think that I hadn't changed. I hadn't made a difference. But I knew the truth. When it mattered, I was able to do the right thing. And in the end, I was able to make a difference. That mattered to me. And that was all that mattered. What the... You're smiling at a time like this? The hell? How could you possibly be content with this? Well, power to you, Devin. Makes my conscience lighter if you pass with a smile on your face. Kane, you arsehole. Yeah, Mercury would stop you. I wouldn't be around to see it, but I was sure justice would win out. Panthea would be made better. So in that case, I should just enjoy my last moments, right? I was allowed that much. Pleasant memories began to float to me. Memories I had never really stopped to appreciate before. Playing board games as a kid with Art and Polly, without any interference from Odin. Actually enjoying ourselves and getting along. A meaningful conversation I had with fellow soldiers back at base, where I convinced him to desert back home to his wife the day before the base raid. A movie night I'd had at this office with Aja and Ariane, where we just ate pizza and talked about nonsense. A beautiful sunset I watched from the ocean. Always liked the idea of reincarnation. I hope whatever form my next life took, I'd appreciate it at the time. And if I didn't get a next life, I was pretty lucky to just get one, right? I thought about more of the little moments of happiness throughout my life. Moments never documented. Moments only I could appreciate. Moments that mattered to me. And I kept thinking about them. And eventually, I didn't... You know what's a useful way of viewing things? Not many things in life are simply better or worse. Okay, actually that's not a good way of putting it because that's just not true. I mean to say, you're going to be faced with a lot of choices in life, and you'll stress about them. Like, what to possibly choose. It's so important to choose right. And these choices can be incredibly important. They might change your life drastically. But that doesn't mean what you choose matters. The world is infinitely vast and complicated, and you can never really predict how things will unfold. What either choice will really entail. And more to the point, if it's a really hard choice, odds are both options are fine. Both options have their own pros and cons. Different but not better or worse. Where to vacation? Different but not better or worse. What college to go to? Different but not better or worse. Who to date? Different, sure, but not better or worse. To have kids or not to? Different, not better, not worse. Alive or... Well, we didn't get a key from that one. So that's pretty unfortunate. I guess we'll go back to this one because it's the only one that we've done any on that hasn't got a lock on it. I suppose. I'm feeling like this is Kane, right? That's my guess. I might be wrong. And this is Locke. Alright, the gambler. But I guess we'll see. Is this Thane then? We will figure it out in the next one. That's 2 down. And what? 5 to go. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.